When you think of a speedrun for a game, there's usually two categories that might come to mind: any percent and 100%. These categories are applicable to the vast majority of games. However, there's actually another category where that is also the case that a lot of people don't know about. Low percent is basically the opposite of 100%. In a 100% run, you have to get every single item / collectible / thing that the game has to offer, while in low percent, you finish the game while doing the least amount of things possible. Now, wait a minute, beating the game with the least amount of things possible, isn't that just any percent? Well, sometimes that is actually the case, like for example in the OOT any percent run, where runners only collect the Kokiri sword, a shield and some Deku nuts and then warp straight to the credits. There is no known way to beat this game with fewer items than that, so in this case the any percent route is the low percent route. In many other cases though, doing some things that you wouldn't necessarily have to do can drastically take time off the run. Beating a game while doing the absolute bare minimum and skipping as much stuff as possible can often make for a very outlandish route, which is why low percent is usually not run that much. The reason I'm explaining all this nonsense is because I want to talk about one of these speedruns today. The category I want to talk about is Hollow Knight's true ending low percent run, and let me tell you, it is a wild one. We've already broken down what the low percent part of the category's name means, and true ending is pretty easy to explain. True ending simply means that the category requires the runner to finish the game with the Dream No More ending, which is considered the true ending to the game by the community. To get it, you just need to kill the 3 dreamers like you usually would, and on top of that get the 2 pieces of the King's Soul talisman before taking on the Hollow Knight and the Radiance. Obtaining both of the King's Soul fragments is usually only possible very far into the game, and you are expected to get a lot of items in order to reach them. Let's find out how speedrunners completely abuse the mechanics of the game in order to skip some of that, and why this speedrun takes over 40 hours to complete. First, we need to define what a thing is in Hollow Knight. In other games, what counts towards your actual game completion percentage might be kinda loosely defined. It could be something that the game actually acknowledges you for getting every instance of, or maybe there really is no definition within the game and the community needs to make one up. With Hollow Knight, however, it's actually pretty simple to define, since the game actually has a built-in percentage counter. You only unlock it right before the final boss, but the game actually counts your percentage throughout the entire playthrough and always tells you how much percent you completed after the credits.
Nice.
There's a set list of things that brings up your percentage, like collecting certain items and defeating certain bosses. So obviously, the goal for the low percent speedrun simply becomes to activate as few of these percent triggers as possible. The amount the speedrun finishes with is 26. The run starts pretty much like any other Hollow Knight run. You get out of the tutorial, run past Elderbug, jump right down the well, and after running the lab through the first area, use this intended skip in order to not have to do False Knight. Right after skipping this percent though, you immediately go grab the one spell that you actually need to finish the game, which adds the first percent to the counter. After this, the run just continues on as normal, by killing Hornet, which adds 1%, and getting the dash and the wall jump, both of which add 2% to the counter as all of the movement abilities do. Now comes a point where the run deviates from the normal route a bit, because in a normal any percent speedrun of Hollow Knight, the next thing you wanna do is get the Dream Nail in order to start killing the 3 dreamers. To get it, you would usually do this shade skip over here in order to get up to the resting ground somewhat early. On the way over here, you have to pass by and kill Grossmother, which would add another percent, so you can't go this way in the low percent run. Instead, runners have to do this giant detour over to Deep Nest where they can get the Tram Pass, which actually doesn't add a percent even though it's a key item, probably since Team Cherry knew it's the most useless item in the game. After this, they just need to ride the tram down here over to the Ancient Basin, climb all the way back up to the city, and then make their way through the east portion of the city to the elevator that leads up to the resting grounds, skipping 1% in the process. Afterwards, the run kinda returns to the regular route. Runners grab the Dream Nail and go through Crystal Peaks in order to get the Crystal Dash, before making their way to the first Dreamer. Oh yeah, I should mention, every boss you fight in this run obviously has to be fought without any upgrades whatsoever. Even in the any percent route you get the Shaman Stone along the way, which significantly increases your spell damage, but here you've got nothing. But after taking out the Watcher Knights and killing Lurien for another 2%, it's time to go down to the Ancient Basin to kill Empty Vessel, as well as its upgraded version Lost Kin for a bunch of essence that will very much be needed later. Grab the Monarch Wings, which are actually only necessary because of one specific jump in the White Palace. Awesome. Okay, just one more movement ability left. For that, runners have to first go to Kingdom's Edge, kill Hornet once again, grab the King's Brand, and then return to the ancient basin to go through this giant door where they can grab the Shade Dash. Now that they have everything they need, they can simply make their way towards the last two Dreamers, killing Umu in order to get to Monomon, and killing the Traitor Lord along the way to the last Dreamer in order to get the first of the two white fragments. Now just kill the third and final Dreamer, and all that's left to do is get the second white fragment, and then we're done. Shouldn't be that big of an ordeal, right? That's right, this is where the fun begins. Everything I just explained might already seem like a lot of stuff to some of you, but speedrunners can knock it out in a little over 90 minutes. The rest of the 40 hours is spent doing this. But why exactly is this something you have to do in this one? Well, like I said, in order to reach the true ending you need both of the white fragments. One of them is pretty simple, which is why runners just grab it while going to the last Dreamer. You just need to get Shade Cloak first and then kill the Traitor Lord, and the White Lady simply gives it to you. The second white fragment is obtained from the remains of the Pale King, located deep within the White Palace. The White Palace is a pretty infamous area in the community for the sheer difficulty it poses for beginner players. However, that is far from the main problem here. Entering the White Palace requires you to upgrade the Dream Nail after obtaining at least 1800 essence. This is something you might not even really think about as that much of a challenge while playing casually, since there's a lot of different ways to get essence in the game and usually you just kinda have enough at some point. However, most of the big ways to obtain essence are tied to either killing these warrior dreams or refighting some harder versions of major bosses, both of which add to your percent count. The refights actually don't add any percentage by themselves, however they require you to have killed the normal version of the boss first, which do all add 1%, meaning you can only do one of them in this route, since you have to kill Broken Vessel anyways in order to get the double jump. Other ways to obtain essence include collecting them from these essence trees and killing these weird NPC ghosts that are scattered across the world, all of which give you a single essence. Runners grab all of these during the run in order to get as much essence as possible, which ends up being 907, which is barely half of what you need. However, there's actually one last way to obtain essence that I have neglected to mention. When you kill any enemy, sometimes, very rarely, 1 out of 300 times to be exact, they drop you one single essence. Honestly, this is such a weird obscure thing that most likely just kinda confuses a lot of players the few times it happens throughout their playthrough, that I'm not sure why Team Cherry even included it. I guess they did it so you can theoretically farm an infinite amount of essence in case you somehow get rid of all the available essence using a lot of Dream Gates. But this tiny decision, them including this weird mechanic, is what makes this category so nightmarish. This is why only 3 people have ever finished a low percent true ending run. This is why the runs take upwards of 45 hours. Because the fact that you can get essence this way means that you can get to 1800 without gaining any more percent from essence sources. You can simply grind out enemies, like these poor birds, for around 40 hours to get the necessary essence instead. Luckily, you can already get the Dream Wielder charm with 907 essence, which actually raises the chance to get one of these essence drops from 1 in 300 to 1 in 200, which is definitely something that only like 0.001% of players know about. The charm does add another percent, but since you have to get it anyways in order to get the upgraded Dream Nail, it doesn't really make any difference. After doing the same inputs for 40 grueling hours, finishing the run is relatively simple. Because after relearning how to even play the game, runners just need to grab the upgraded Dream Nail, go through the White Palace and the Birthplace real quick, and then finish it out with a nice and easy, completely unupgraded Radiance fight. After climbing up the platforms in a last phase and landing the final hit on her, the run is finally over. Wait, why hasn't the video ended yet?
But I'm not done yet!
That's right, we're not done yet, because back in 2022 a new skip was making its rounds through the Hollow Knight community. It's exclusive to the newer versions of Hollow Knight and involves shooting a vengeful spirit at a downward slope like this with insane precision and then pogoing off of the descending fireball right after. The trick is known as stall ball, and unfortunately people figured out that it actually has a pretty big use in this category. Remember how I said that the wings are only required for one specific jump in the White Palace? You could theoretically skip all of the other use cases for them, but this one jump remained impossible to do without the double jump until now. Because the specific ledge that you need to jump up actually has a slope that allows for a stall ball to be performed instead, which means White Palace is now possible without the wings. This brings the minimum completion required to get the true ending down by 2%. However, there's actually another percent that is skipped because of this, since you only ever killed Broken Vessel in order to get to the wings in the first place, meaning the total now stands at 23%. This does create some complications though, since not fighting Broken Vessel means that there is no way to fight Lost Kin either, which means 400 easy essence that cannot be obtained this way and, of course, 400 more essence that have to be farmed from enemies. Actually it's 401 essence since you can't get Vesper's Ghost in this route anymore, because like I said, stall ball is only possible on newer versions of the game, which have the addition of a boss in the Hive who would add a percent. Apart from that though, the route stayed mostly the same, except for the addition of some small skips that runners need to do because you don't have the wings anymore, like baiting the Aspid to follow you all the way over here in order to get to the second Hornet fight, or the small enemy pogo up to the Essence Tree.
Thank you.
Also runners need to do the entirety of White Palace without the double jump, which is certainly not very pleasant. But there's actually good news too, because around the same time a, at least slightly more effective way of farming essence from enemies was found. Instead of continuously exiting and re-entering a room to farm enemies, you can instead just bait all of these guys into one corner in a specific room of the Hive and they keep spitting out a bunch of bees for you to kill. Eventually, once they've spawned enough bees, the game even forgets about what it should do with newly spawned enemies and they just start spawning in with 1 HP and without a damaging hitbox. So you can just stay in one spot, keep swinging your nail up, and just like that, you'll be at 1800 essence in no time. Or in approximately 45 hours, but same thing. After an even longer grind, the ending of the run also stays pretty much the same, even though some of these late game areas can be quite tricky to get through without the double jump that you are most definitely meant to have by now. Well, after knocking out the big moth one more time, the run comes to a close, with a completion of 23%. And that is where the low percent rouse stays for now, until someone discovers a new trick that somehow makes the run even worse. Yo, what up? Thank you so much for watching until the end, hope you enjoyed. Also, huge thanks to Scurry, who somehow did this run twice and allowed me to use their footage for this video. Apart from that, I don't really have anything to say right now. Subscribe, I guess. Next video coming pretty soon, probably. Okay, bye.